Have you ever experienced, either recently or at some point in your life, a profound connection with someone that felt almost magnetic? Those silent glances that seem to communicate everything without words, the rush of emotions that appear without any logical explanation, and the sense that this person was somehow meant just for you. But let me ask you something crucial. What happens when that deep connection isn't reciprocated? What happens when, despite all the feelings you have, the other person does not see you in the same light or doesn't choose you with the same intensity? There is a hidden truth here, one that very few are willing to confront. It is a psychological trap, a secret uncovered by the legendary psychologist Carl Jung, who spent his life exploring the mysteries of the unconscious mind. This secret sheds light on a behavior that might seem completely paradoxical at first. Why some men obsessively pursue women who resist them, only to lose interest mysteriously once they finally have their affection. This pattern is not hypothetical. It is happening right now in countless relationships, whether you are aware of it or not. If you are single or find yourself in a relationship that feels unstable, the insights I am about to share could save you from years of unnecessary emotional pain and heartache. Research suggests that around 90% of women go their entire lives without ever recognizing this subtle yet powerful subconscious pattern that quietly shapes their romantic destiny. This is not just another piece of generic relationship advice that the self-help industry pumps out. This is an insight into the hidden workings of the male mind, a truth that explains why, without even realizing it, you might be undermining your own chances of experiencing genuine, lasting love right now. Here's something few dare to admit. The man who seems completely, utterly in love with you today may not be in love with you at all, but with a psychological illusion projected onto you. And when that illusion inevitably fades, the sense of abandonment becomes unavoidable. The most astonishing part is that the more intensely he expresses love at the beginning, the higher the likelihood that it is merely a temporary projection of his inner fantasy. Ignoring this knowledge and continuing to act as if every romantic gesture is genuine sets you up to repeat the same exhausting cycle of unfulfilled relationships that countless women endure every single day. Every single moment that passes without this understanding is a moment that powerful psychological forces are quietly shaping your romantic fate, often against your will. What you are about to discover is a secret of immense importance, a truth that can distinguish between being abandoned after fleeting passion and building a love that is steady, genuine, and lasting. This knowledge is available to you now, but it will not remain accessible forever. Carl Jung, regarded as one of the most brilliant psychologists of all time, uncovered a deeply revealing and potentially life-altering pattern within the male psyche that explains behaviors that often appear contradictory, even self-sabotaging, and which may be affecting your love life at this very moment. Jung found that the collective unconscious of men carries a deep, primitive longing that drives them irresistibly toward mystery, challenge, and the pursuit of what feels just out of reach. This longing creates a cycle of intense attraction followed by withdrawal, leaving millions of women confused, frustrated, and emotionally wounded every day. The opportunity to apply this knowledge in your life is fleeting, and the sooner you understand it, the sooner you can shield yourself from heartbreak. Today, while there is still time, we will explore how Jung's insights into psychological projection explain why men often fall hardest for women who maintain distance, and how understanding this can immediately transform your experiences with love and relationships. Ignoring these patterns could cost you countless hours, months, or even years trapped in relationships that are doomed from the start. Every day spent unaware of this cycle is another day lost in the pursuit of authentic connection and real love. Prepare yourself for a journey into the depths of the male psyche. through the 5 psychological mechanisms Carl Jung identified that fuel this destructive dynamic. Each mechanism will reveal a hidden layer of understanding, and by the end of this exploration, you will possess insights that few people in the world ever gain. The first mechanism is the projection of Anima, which Jung described as the ghost in the mirror. It reveals what truly occurs in a man's mind when a woman distances herself, and it explains why the most intense and passionate romantic connections can suddenly collapse without warning. Jung identified a psychological phenomenon called Anima, representing the inner feminine archetype that every man carries unconsciously. This powerful inner image drives male attraction in ways that most conventional relationship advice completely ignores. This is the first key to understanding why men often become obsessed when faced with rejection. When a woman pulls away, she becomes, in the man's mind, a blank canvas onto which he projects his inner fantasies and desires. The absence she creates is filled with idealized imaginings that amplify the intensity of his attraction to levels that are almost compulsive. Essentially, the male mind is creating a perfect version of her, one that no real person could ever match, which sets the stage for an almost inevitable psychological trap. This is the first painful secret that nearly every woman never uncovers. When you find yourself at the center of a man's intense admiration after withdrawing, he is not truly in love with you. He is enamored with the mental image he has built, a projection of his own mind that will eventually collide with reality, often with devastating consequences. Have you ever wondered why so many men relentlessly pursue women, only to lose all interest once they have won her over? What unconscious force drives this seemingly irrational behavior that leaves women feeling hurt, confused, and questioning themselves? The answer lies in the violent collision of projection with reality. Once the distance shrinks, the fantasy shatters, and the once enchanting connection often ends in disappointment. Reflect on your past relationships. How often did you sense that a man was not in love with your real self, but with a fabricated ideal that existed only in his imagination? Imagine how differently your love life could unfold if you recognized this pattern before it had the chance to destroy your happiness. The second mechanism is emotional scarcity. This explains why the unavailable becomes irresistibly desirable and challenges everything we think we understand about male attraction. Jungian psychology reveals a deeply primitive and largely unconscious drive in men. The perception of scarcity increases value. When a woman appears emotionally distant or intermittently unavailable, she triggers an instinctual response rooted in the male unconscious, a signal that equates rarity with tremendous worth. This mechanism operates below the level of awareness, completely bypassing conscious thought, which is why a woman who is constantly available and openly affectionate can paradoxically be seen as less valuable, while a woman who maintains a subtle emotional distance becomes a prize to be pursued at almost any cost. This insight may feel unsettling, but failing to grasp it could cost you years of unnecessary suffering and confusion in your romantic life. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone who seemed indifferent to your presence while overlooking those who were consistently loving and present? What does this reveal about the deep psychological wiring that governs attraction? Picture this scenario. You meet two people. One shows steady, open interest, warmth, and affection. The other remains distant, unpredictable, occasionally interested, and sometimes completely absent. Which one sparks more curiosity, more desire, more emotional tension? Why is it that our minds seem hardwired to prize the one who rejects or eludes us, rather than the one who is consistently available? These questions point to a deeply ingrained pattern within the collective unconscious, one that traps the majority of people in an endless cycle of desire and frustration unless they understand and confront the next critical psychological mechanism. Mechanism 3 is the archetype of the unattainable maiden, a mythological trap hidden deep in the male psyche. Prepare yourself for a secret that few people ever truly understand. Carl Jung identified a powerful archetype buried in the collective unconscious of men, one he called the unattainable maiden. This is not a simple theory. It is a primal force that guides male behavior almost invisibly, without them ever realizing it. When a woman pulls away, she triggers this ancient archetype in a man's mind, creating an almost mythological level of attraction. In this state, the man no longer responds to the real woman in front of him, but to an archetypal figure, a symbol promising profound spiritual or emotional transformation. The danger is hidden in plain sight. It forces us to question the nature of past relationships. Were the most intense experiences of your life rooted in true love, or were they fueled by unconscious archetypal projections? Many men report a sense of completeness, a feeling of finally becoming whole when they encounter a woman who initially seems out of reach. But pause and reflect. How long did that magic truly last? What most people never realize is the tragic nature of this dynamic. These men are projecting their own potential for wholeness onto a distant female figure, creating a psychological trap. Here is the unsettling question every woman should consider. Would you rather be loved intensely by an idealized projection destined to vanish, or moderately but genuinely loved for who you truly are? Mechanism 4 is the shadow pattern, which Jung described as the part of ourselves we hide, repress, or deny. This is perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. When a man becomes obsessively attracted to a woman who distances herself, he is being driven by his shadow, which contains deep wounds connected to abandonment and rejection. You need to understand that this shadow pattern transforms the primal fear of inadequacy into an intense, almost compulsive attraction toward the very person who seems to confirm that fear. It is as if the mind repeatedly seeks the same wound that once caused pain, attempting to heal it unconsciously through repetition. Have you noticed how men with insecurities often become more infatuated with women who reject them? Jung would describe this as the shadow pattern, where the man unconsciously tries to heal the pain of past rejection by pursuing someone who mirrors that very pain. This cycle can become addictive, leading to relationships marked by intense passion, obsession, and inevitable abandonment. Very few manage to escape this loop, but understanding the next mechanism may provide a psychological key to breaking free from this destructive cycle. Mechanism 5 is the individuation cycle, a profound insight that can permanently transform your understanding of relationships. Individuation is the process by which a person becomes psychologically whole and fully integrated. For men, this often involves a quest to reconcile and integrate the inner feminine. When a woman pulls away, she paradoxically becomes a mirror, allowing the man to confront and project aspects of his repressed inner self. If this mechanism is not understood, a woman can unknowingly become a tool in another person's psychological journey, serving as a reflection for his inner development rather than being appreciated for her true self. The paradox is striking. The more a woman maintains her mystery and distance, the more she becomes a mirror for the man's unexplored inner world. Without awareness, what appears as romantic love may actually be the man's unconscious search for his own wholeness. The surprising truth is that this mechanism can work in reverse. Women, too, may be projecting their inner masculine archetype, the animus, onto the men they meet. What feels like love at first sight is often a potent unconscious projection of one's own internal potential, rather than a connection with another real person. With these mechanisms understood, you are now entering a transformative moment. The emotional tension you may feel as you read is no accident. It mirrors exactly what occurs in the male psyche during projection. You are witnessing in real time the same psychological dynamics that silently shape romantic relationships. Here are 5 unmistakable signs that you are being projected onto, a reality that may resonate with your past and current experiences. The first sign is excessive idealization, a hidden trap. He begins attributing nearly supernatural qualities to you, assigning you an impossible perfection. Phrases like, "I've never met anyone like you," or "It feels like I've known you my whole life," are often red flags. This idealization grows stronger when emotional distance is maintained. The harsh truth is that he is not in love with the real you, but with a psychological image he has constructed in his own mind. The second sign is growing obsession with rejection. As you pull away, his interest intensifies to alarming levels. Constant texts, unexpected gifts, and extreme declarations of affection often follow. This is a manifestation of a psychological projection rather than a connection with who you genuinely are. In this phase, obsession can escalate into possessiveness, creating emotional turbulence. The third sign is a magnetic attraction to mystery. Like a moth drawn to a flame that could burn it, he is fascinated with the hidden parts of your personality rather than what you openly express. He constructs elaborate theories about your thoughts and desires, driven by an unconscious search for his own shadow projected onto you. The fourth sign is an almost mystical transformation. He may describe feelings of transcendence, euphoria, or complete rebirth in your presence. These intense sensations are not true love. They are the effects of archetypal projection working at a primitive, unconscious level within his mind. The fifth and final sign is the inevitable collapse. Once emotional distance disappears and he finally wins you over, his intense fascination often evaporates like mist in the morning sun. The initial enchantment breaks, leaving confusion, disappointment, and sometimes even subtle revulsion. The very intensity that seemed like love at first was never grounded in reality. Recognizing these signs is crucial to understanding whether you are being loved for who you truly are, or if you are simply the canvas for someone else's unconscious fantasies. By observing these patterns, you gain the power to break the cycle, protect yourself from emotional harm, and approach relationships with clarity, awareness, and genuine connection. The cruel truth finally comes to light. From the very beginning, it was the idealized projection, not your true self, that drew him in. Are you ready for the final revelation, the insight that could completely transform how you experience love and relationships? We have now reached the culmination of this deep journey into Jungian psychology. You now hold in your hands the hidden truths that Carl Jung uncovered about the male psyche. Truths that many would rather keep secret, but which are now yours to understand. The paradox of distance and attraction is not simply a game people play in relationships. It is a deep, primal mechanism embedded in the layers of the male collective unconscious. Grasping this idea represents one of the highest forms of psychological insight into love, connection, and the human heart. But here is the transformative moment you've been waiting for. Understanding these dark dynamics is not about manipulating others or becoming cynical. Rather, it is the first step toward freeing yourself from unconscious patterns that may have controlled your love life for years. The moment you recognize projection, it loses its power over you. Here is the ultimate revelation that changes everything. The true power of this knowledge is not about using distance to control attraction, but in recognizing when you yourself are being affected by unconscious projections. True liberation comes when you see through the illusions that manipulate both men and women. Imagine being in a relationship where you are loved genuinely for who you are, not for the reflection of an ancient archetype in someone else's mind. Imagine the freedom of no longer being a screen for unconscious fantasies, but instead being recognized and valued as a complete human being in real connection with another. The most profound question is not how to manipulate attraction with this insight, but how to rise above these primitive patterns to build authentic bonds rooted in reality rather than fantasy. Real transformation in love occurs when we stop serving as mirrors for unconscious projections and instead fully embrace our own humanity, complexity, and authenticity. What you choose to do with this knowledge now will shape your romantic destiny. This understanding of relational psychology goes against the typical advice offered by mainstream dating culture. It is rare wisdom, the kind that can save you years of emotional suffering, but only if you act before these unconscious patterns regain control over your love life. This Jungian insight into the male psyche is deliberately hidden from most women because it exposes uncomfortable truths about attraction. Right now, countless women are trapped in the cycle of idealization and abandonment, wondering why men pursue them so intensely, only to lose interest just as mysteriously. They suffer needlessly, unaware of the forces I've just revealed. The window to transform your relationships using this knowledge is closing fast. Every day that passes, thousands of women lose the chance to form authentic, meaningful connections because they remain trapped in cycles of projection. If you have recognized any of the 5 warning signs of anima projection in your own relationships, whether past or present, share this insight with someone who needs it before they repeat the same mistakes. Doing so could make the difference between years of emotional pain and genuine freedom for someone you care about. Take a moment to review your romantic history. Which of the 5 dangerous signs appeared most often? Was it the excessive idealization, the obsessive pursuit triggered by rejection, or perhaps the mystical transformation he claimed to feel in your presence? This is not just a mental exercise. Your awareness could prevent another woman from falling into the same emotional trap. Sharing your experiences could be the wake-up call someone desperately needs today. Subscribe and turn on notifications to continue this exclusive Jungian psychology series. Upcoming content will explore the male archetypes that women unconsciously project onto and how understanding these dynamics can free you from recurring cycles in your love life. This psychological wisdom is not permanent. It won't be accessible forever. Join the community of women who have awakened to the hidden forces shaping their romantic experiences. Your future self will thank you for taking this simple but powerful step today. And consider this: the most intense obsession a man feels when you distance yourself from him has little to do with you personally. Instead, it reveals the deepest wound of his inner child, a wound he unconsciously seeks to heal through you. This insight will change the way you interpret male behavior forever and free you from taking his reactions personally. Jung discovered that when a man becomes obsessively attached to a woman who pulls away, he is attempting unconsciously to repair his primal wound of maternal rejection. Every boy experiences a necessary psychological separation from his mother, which is crucial for the development of his masculine identity. Yet this separation leaves a hidden wound, a deep yearning for the unconditional love that once enveloped him completely. Here is the critical mechanism to understand. When you create emotional distance, you unknowingly trigger this ancient maternal wound in his psyche. His obsessive pursuit is rarely about winning you over. It is about attempting to heal the original rejection that shaped his most primitive emotional template. This dynamic creates a devastating cycle. The more you withdraw, the more you activate his abandonment wound, which intensifies his pursuit to pathological levels. Paradoxically, the moment you become fully available, the emotional tension that mirrored his early trauma disappears, and his interest often vanishes just as mysteriously. Reflect on your past relationships with brutal honesty. Have you noticed that men with more traumatic childhoods tend to become the most obsessively attached when you distance yourself? that is no accident. It is the wounded boy inside the man desperately trying to heal, unconsciously recreating and resolving his original emotional trauma. Few realize that this cycle creates a psychological dependency more potent than any chemical substance. The neurochemical surge produced during the cycles of pursuit, fleeting connection, and renewed rejection can generate an emotional addiction that lasts decades if not recognized and understood. Ask yourself, in your current relationship, are you unconsciously playing the role of the rejecting mother figure? Are you inadvertently perpetuating a cycle that will never allow for healthy attachment or real intimacy? Recognizing this is the first and most crucial step toward breaking free and creating the authentic, stable, and deeply fulfilling relationships you deserve. Here's the most uncomfortable truth. Many women intuitively sense this dynamic and, without fully realizing it, sometimes use it to maintain control in their relationships. But this type of manipulation comes at a heavy cost. It keeps the relationship stuck in neurotic patterns, preventing it from evolving into genuine love and mutual understanding. We have now arrived at the most transformative stage of this journey, the moment when knowledge becomes the power to create real, lasting change in your relationships. Everything we've explored leads to one critical question. How do you break free from the cycle of projection, rejection, and obsession to build authentic connection and love? Jung provided an answer so profound that it is rarely discussed in mainstream relationship counseling. The path forward requires something deeply counterintuitive: the conscious integration of your masculine and feminine energies within yourself. When you achieve psychological wholeness through your own process of individuation, you no longer need to seek completeness by projecting it onto others. This integration begins with a courageous act of self-awareness, recognizing and withdrawing your own projections. Every time you feel sudden, overwhelming attraction to someone, pause and ask yourself, am I seeing the real person or am I projecting my inner animus onto him? The uncomfortable truth is that projection works both ways. Just as men project their anima onto women, women project their animus, the inner masculine, onto men. That feeling of, he completes me, is often not about him at all. It is the recognition of rejected masculine qualities you have projected outward rather than integrated within yourself. The most powerful revelation is this: when you withdraw projections and integrate both your feminine and masculine aspects, you become psychologically whole. That wholeness creates a different kind of magnetism. It is no longer a desperate attraction born of incompleteness seeking fulfillment. Instead, it becomes a natural gravitation between two authentic beings who recognize and appreciate one another for who they truly are. Jung called this process conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites within the psyche. When you achieve this inner integration, your relationships transform from unconscious neurotic patterns into conscious, intentional choices. You no longer need someone else to complete you. You choose someone to complement the wholeness you already possess. Integration does not mean rejecting your feminine essence. It means embracing all parts of yourself: strength and vulnerability, logic and intuition, assertiveness and receptivity, without projecting the parts you disown onto others. The paradox most people fail to grasp is this: true intimacy becomes possible only when you no longer need it to feel whole. When you are complete within yourself, you can finally see others as they truly are, not as screens for your projections. Imagine how your relationships would change if you approached them from a place of self-wholeness instead of neediness. Imagine seeing others as they really are, while they see you as you truly are, not as the embodiment of their fantasies or inner voids. This is the ultimate liberation Jung's psychology offers: freedom from unconscious forces that have ruled human relationships for millennia. The question is no longer whether you can be loved, but whether you can love beyond projection. Can you remove the fantasy and fully embrace another human being in all their complexity and imperfection? That is the challenge and the supreme reward of conscious relationships. We have now reached the point where all threads of our Jungian exploration come together. You hold knowledge that most people will never discover about the hidden forces shaping attraction, desire, and love. The question now is not what you know, but how you will use it. Will you exploit this knowledge to manipulate attraction and trigger projection and obsession? Or will you use it as a path to liberation for yourself and others trapped in unconscious cycles? Jung believed that consciousness is the highest moral achievement, and bringing light to unconscious patterns is an ethical act with profound spiritual significance. The wisdom you now carry has the same ethical dimension. You face a definitive choice. Will you continue participating in the dance of projection and rejection, gaining temporary power but guaranteed long-term suffering? Or will you step entirely out of this ancestral pattern and create a new relational paradigm based on genuine, conscious recognition of self and others? The first path may offer short-term control, but it ensures repeated cycles of disappointment. The second path demands courage to leave familiar patterns behind, but opens the door to authentic connection that does not collapse when projections fade. Imagine a world where relationships are not built on neurotic projection, but on conscious recognition, where bonds deepen over time instead of burning bright and then disappearing. This is the transformative possibility Jung's psychology presents, not just better relationships, but a more integrated, aware, and conscious humanity. The deepest truth I can leave you with is this: the strength, wisdom, and love you once sought in others, those qualities you projected onto partners, have always existed within you. They have been waiting to be seen, reclaimed, and integrated. Your wholeness does not depend on finding a perfect person to project onto. It lies in recognizing that you are already complete within yourself. This is the sacred marriage Jung described, not between two people, but between the divided aspects of your own soul.